Hello, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well out there, as always. For whatever reason, recently my guilty pleasure media consumption thing has been Star Wars. I've just been in a very Star Wars mood lately. Being in such a Star Wars mood got me specifically thinking about the prequels, because I've noticed that on the internet there's been this redemption arc going on with the prequels and their reputation with the internet. Because when I was growing up, the prequels, the dialogue around the prequels on the internet was that the prequels are bad.
I fucking hate the Star Wars prequels more than life itself. But why? What makes them so bad? I hate these movies with such a passion that I find it difficult to put thoughts to words on why they're so completely and utterly wrong.
Some people would defend, like obviously the lightsaber fights are really cool and certain things like that, but all in all, the dialogue was that the prequels stink, and the kind of genre about talking about the prequels was in criticizing them and pointing out the flaws, or like the stupid lines, making fun of the sand line, or making fun of Hayden Christensen's performance, or anything else. The tone of all the dialogue was, these movies stink. The real film people know that the original movies are the really good ones, and the prequels are sort of the lame, weird version of Star Wars that we don't like. And George needed somebody to like tell him no, because he just kept going with all his crazy crack-fueled ideas and all this ridiculous nonsense. And that was the narrative that I remember on the internet basically my whole life about the prequels. That's what people would say. But recently I have noticed a seismic shift in the way that people talk about the prequels on the internet. There's a sizable chunk of people now that defend the prequels, that stand up for them. It's a popular YouTube video essay genre to be like why the prequels were actually good. And I've engaged with some of this content, and it made me feel curious how I would feel if I were to go back and rewatch them myself. Because as much as, Star Wars was one of my first loves in media, it kind of became a lesser interest of mine. But yeah, until this most recent rewatch, I would say that the prequels were sort of stuck in my mind as the bad Star Wars movies, or the less artistic Star Wars movies, which I think honestly it just boils down to being so dialed into the internet dialogue that people were having about this, and just people make compelling points, and the prequels are flawed, and it's easy to hyperfixate on those flaws, especially when you're not rewatching the movies necessarily, you're just watching people talk about the movies. I assumed before this most recent rewatch that what happened was people were so disappointed by the sequel trilogy that the prequels just started to look better to some people. That was where my head was at, that it's like, oh, it's not actually good, it's just that it comes off as better than it is because of the sequel trilogy being so bad. I think that does a lot for a movie, is having something to compare it to in that way. Because I would agree with most fans that the sequel trilogy is bad.
Maybe he's Jake Skywalker. He's not my Luke Skywalker.
And I could see how something being made that's so much worse could make you look back on something that isn't perfect but has good things about it, and it can help you appreciate the good things in it. But I haven't watched the Disney movies since they came out, and I just don't really have a ton of interest personally. Didn't like them, don't expect to like them rewatching them. But having actually rewatched the movies, I don't really think that's the case. I think the sequels only exaggerate people's feelings about the prequels. The fact that the sequels were so poorly received, I think, helps by comparison, but ultimately isn't the reason that people like the prequels now. That being said, this rewatch of the prequels was not a perfect experience. It's definitely still held back by certain flaws. There's flaws that I still see in it that I just can't get over, that for me impede full enjoyment of the story. Like in the first one, for me, it's stuff like Jar Jar. he isn't a good comedic relief. He's an unfunny comedic relief, which is not. You can't have that. He needs to be likable and funny, and instead he's annoying and unfunny. And I think people overstate how much of a flaw this is. Like the story needed a character like that, or it would have benefited the story to have a character like that if he could have just actually made him charming and likable and funny. It's just the fact that he's so annoying, and he has that kind of Mr. Magoo, like accidentally is helping them all the time, and it gets annoying. So there's stuff like that. I think Jake Lloyd is like really not good as Anakin, you know, all the what's this do, whoa, you know. Obviously the bullying that people did to this kid when he got the role to be in Star Wars is ridiculous and nonsensical. There's a way to say, you know, the performance was rough, but obviously he's a child. It's not his fault. He's just doing what he was asked to do as a kid, and he did his best. So nothing wrong with a kid not doing well in a movie. That's totally normal. That's to be expected. It's up to the adults to make it work in a movie, and I just don't think they did. And unfortunately, the kid's the one that gets all the shit for it, of course. But all in all, like, I don't think he was very good. I mean, a lot of people love him in it because he's like really cute. Like when I watch movie reactions to this movie, it's usually like this, like, oh my god, he's so cute.
Aww. He's so cute.
What?
Aww. So cute.
Let's talk about that.
Who is this adorable child?
Reaction, and I think that's kind of what they were going for. I think that's almost that may be why they picked him. But yeah, and then stuff like midichlorians just being a dumb element to add to the magic system of the world, or at least to just mention it but then never explain it enough for it to be meaningful or make sense, really. And of course, same with Anakin's immaculate conception, bringing that into the story and then just never having it go anywhere, never paying off in any way, never meaning anything ultimately. Total waste of potential. And to throw it in and then never do anything with it is a really strange choice. And then, you know, the second one is a lot of cringy, not all that great romantic scenes. Like, it's not terrible. It's got one of the best love themes of all time. John Williams crushes it with the music. But then there's like awkward writing the CG thing. And like weird touching and lines of dialogue so bad, so cringe-inducing, like this.
What's wrong, Annie?
Yeah, his mom just died, and you just saw him carry her corpse back from death, and you're just like,
What's wrong, Annie?
what could possibly be wrong? And then just a lot of unsatisfying reveal of information for me with Attack of the Clones. I think Attack of the Clones is still the worst one, even of like the original 6. It's just my least favorite.
It's not fair.
The clone world is like really cool, but even still, I don't fully get what this story is. Like, why are these clones being made? Like, who was this set up by? Was this set up by Palpatine? And then it was like fed to the Jedi that they're supposed to get this army at some point. It's made a little bit too vague to be a satisfying element of the story, and so much of it focuses on that. Like, as a kid, I remember just being like, why is Yoda flying in with this clone army? Like, I didn't even fully understand what was happening. That aspect of it was just confusing. And you know, stuff like, I wish we could have known where Dooku came from a little bit more, gotten a bit of a story as to how this guy, because he just shows up and is the new apprentice in this movie, and you're like, who is this? What? Who's this guy? Oh, he used to be a Jedi. Like, you kind of put it together, his backstory a little bit, but I don't know, I think it would have done the story good to dig into him a bit more and allow him to show those more interesting layers that apparently are there with him. Like, I think it actually could have been cool to show Dooku as a Jedi in the first movie. Show him being at odds with the Jedi Council. Show him in this state of conflict before he shows up as the villain in the second movie. I think that being familiar with what he was like before becoming a Sith would have made him a more interesting character to me, or would have fully realized the potential that I think this character has. I know there's like supplemental material about Dooku that explores his story in more depth, but I haven't watched that stuff, and I don't know, if he was going to be more interesting in the movie, then it would have been good to have some of that stuff in the movie. And then yeah, with Revenge of the Sith, obviously like the big flaw that it's still there for me, and I just kind of can't get past it, is the Anakin's character turn being so sudden and feeling not properly motivated, not completely justified in his actions, his reactions. And you know, I'm not alone in this. This is another one where it's like I watch people rewatching this movie or watching this movie, and a big common reaction that I see is people just being like, why? Like, why is he doing this? Why, Anakin? This doesn't make sense. Like,
it's such a pendulum with Anakin in this movie, dude. He literally said 14 seconds ago, what have I done? Knowing he did something wrong, and then deliberately chose to just obey this fucking charcoaled ass Nazi man.
Even if you're trying to save her, it's like, okay, how is this helping you in that? It doesn't make sense to people. And it's because it just doesn't really totally make sense. And it is a major flaw for me with that movie, especially because that's what the whole trilogy is about. And it's what like everything is culminating to flub that last moment is like, oof, that's a fatal wound for this trilogy in a certain sense. But in another sense, it's just the speed of the turn. Like everything is built up to with the turn really beautifully. They lay the foundation in Attack of the Clones, where it's like, we've seen him have this revenge before. We've seen the darkness that happened from this first version of the loss. And so the threat of it happening a second time could turn him to darkness. That part makes sense. I guess for me, like, there were a couple ways that you could have just made it make more sense. Like, if Padme had died before Anakin had fully turned to the dark side, like the Jedi stop him from going in to try to save her with these dark side powers or something, or in some other way Palpatine is able to convince Anakin that it's the Jedi's fault that Padme died. Then when Palpatine says, give into that hatred, go full dark on them, it'll give you the power to take revenge. I feel like that would make a lot more sense as to why he's killing the children and doing all this whatever, because that's what he did when his mom died, right? Is he's like, I killed them all, I slaughtered them all like animals, blah. He has this creepy, scary monologue about it. I think that's the only thing that makes sense as to why he would give into that aggression. I don't think he would do it just for the chance to learn a way to maybe save Padme, because that's the other thing, is that it's never shown to him. He's just told that the dark side can save her. But then Darth Sidious is like, I don't know the way, but together we'll figure it out, my apprentice.
To cheat death is a power only one has achieved. But if we work together, I know we can discover the secret.
You would think that Anakin, if what he really cared about was saving Padme, would stop and go like, whoa, 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 like, what do you think? The whole point of this was that, well, I'm supposed to save her. So yeah, that doesn't totally make sense to me. If Padme had died before he gave in to the hatred, because now his new motivation would just be to take revenge, and Revenge of the Sith would make a bit more sense, where it's like he's lashing out back against them because they took away the thing that he loves. It still has the theme that's important to Star Wars about love being the attachment that is corruptible, and that's why it's important for Jedi to not have attachments. Yeah, I think that would have been one way. Another way would have been, you can build it up exactly the way that you do it in the story, but you just make it clear that the moment that you give in to the dark side, you become like possessed, and you make it clear that he's no longer in control of himself fully. Maybe even do like a split personality thing where it's like, now in him there's a Darth Vader and there's an Anakin, because then he's not in control of himself. He made the deal because he wanted to save her, but then he just loses control and it doesn't even matter. He has the power to save her, but no longer the control over himself to care about that. I think that would have worked better for people in squaring this circle. And I also think it's fair to say, in general, of the prequel trilogy, that a bit too much of the time, you can tell that everything is CG, or the entire environment feels completely artificial. I can see how people might not like that. I can see how some of the more outlandish or eccentric creature designs might not be appealing to people. But as far as the over-reliance on CG goes, I think Attack of the Clones is kind of the worst in this regard.
It's not fair.
A lot of it looks very CG, a lot of it looks very artificial. Then obviously there's a million like plot hole nitpicks that somebody could make of this story, a million tiny little details that don't line up with the original trilogy or don't make perfect sense of the logic of any given situation. These types of things don't really matter to me as much, but they're definitely there. And if you're the type of person that will be bothered by that, then I could see you looking at that as a negative for these movies. And, you know, in general, I think you could argue that the side characters and side factions of characters are underutilized by this story, that characters like Mace Windu could have been even more important to the plot. The other Jedi Masters could have felt like they had more of actual characters instead of just sort of sitting in that room all the time and not contributing to the plot or being fodder for Palpatine to kill or Count Dooku to kill. I think you could also say that while there are a lot of good ideas in the way that the prequels are structured with the world building, you could also say that a lot of it lacks depth in terms of actually being explored in the movie. Like, there's these interesting worlds, but we never learn anything about these worlds. We never really dig into any of these places all that deeply. And I could see somebody interpreting that as a negative. I expected to see a lot of these negatives again. I remember a lot of these criticisms and these issues that I had with these movies, but I wasn't expecting to find so much to appreciate. I mean, like, for one, it's a great concept. I really connect with the theme that George is getting at and the overarching narrative. I don't know, I think it's really poetic and beautiful that the thing that attached him to the world is also the thing that will end up saving him eventually. He's this really tragic character, and his story of being the chosen one, it's a beautiful tragedy for the idea to be that, like, this is a great, whatever, noble hero who his fatal flaw was falling in love. It's super cheesy and it's super, like, sentimental and schmaltzy, but, like, that's the thing that's so good about Star Wars to me, is that it's like this hokey, cheesy, simple, wholesome fun thing. But too, and I love the idea of the story starts with this big this trilogy that culminates in this great tragedy, and then it turns into this great victory in the end. I mean, there's still some tragedy in the original Star Wars, but it gets to end on this big high point. And I don't know, showing the tragic fall of everything before this great victory, I think I really relate to wanting to tell that story. I just think that's a really great concept for a story. I think Anakin is a really great, interesting character, and I think Hayden Christensen does great with the role. I think he's fantastic as Anakin. Do I think every single line read that he gives is 100% amazing?
It's not fair.
I'm overwhelmed, sir.
I don't like sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating. And it gets everywhere.
Not necessarily, but I think when it counts, he delivers. And I don't know, I couldn't imagine the role being played by anybody else. And I really do like the way that he portrays this character with so much unsureness. Like, there is this turmoil to the way that he comes across, almost like in an exaggerated, a bit over the top way. But I just think he's so good. And I think Ewan McGregor almost like just carries the entire fucking prequel trilogy on his back. He is so good as Obi-Wan Kenobi. He is like born to play that role so unbelievably good. I love him in that role. He does everything he needs to do perfectly. And I don't know, like, again, it's not like it's the perfect character or anything like that for me, but it's just his acting performance. I mean, like, it's not like "You are my brother, Anakin, I loved you" is this like intense, complex, whatever acting that actors normally prize whatever getting to put their everything into. It's a real simple thing to say, but he delivers it with like this explosive, beautiful emotionality. Like, he is so good. Natalie Portman is underrated in these movies.
You're making fun of me.
No.
I think Padme in general is an underrated character. To me, Padme is just as cool, iconic as Princess Leia. Really, all the cast is fantastic across all three of these movies. There's not a single like horrible performance to me, apart from I just don't think Jake Lloyd is very good in the original. But that's just me. Every other acting performance, I think you can't say anything bad about them to me. Yeah, I think there's three main stories being told in the prequel trilogy. It's Anakin's descent into the dark side, his love story with Padme, and his relationship with Obi-Wan. Those are the main stories, the main emotional arcs that we're following. Sure, there's a political conflict that is, in my opinion, just more of a backdrop. It's not as integral to the story that you're really following what's going on with that. And it's all clear enough for a kid. Like, I understood as a child, oh, Palpatine is becoming the Emperor right now, that he's like taking power. That made sense to me. I didn't fully understand, okay, there's separatists and they're rebelling against a republic, so there's a civil war going on, and like that all didn't really make sense to me, but it didn't matter, because what I was really following were those three stories. When you think about it in terms of those three emotional arcs, this is where to me it shows itself to be actually a fairly good storyline, where it's like there's a good beginning, middle, and end to each of those arcs. Not every moment in each of these arcs is satisfying, but there's still so much good storytelling going on here. There's some awkwardness in Attack on the Clones aside. I think the relationship between Anakin and Padme is really touching. I love the idea that she meets him at his lowest when he's just this powerless slave boy, and she sees that in him. She sees the true person that he really is, and loves that about him. And he didn't even know that she was a princess, was not in love with her because of that. He fell in love with her just when she was a lady who walked into his shop. I think that's cute. I think that's a good foundation for a romance, a good classic like schmaltzy Hollywood thing. Like, again, these are Flash Gordon inspired stories.
What was the beginning? I would say probably the original impetus for the whole thing was, I used to watch a serial on television called Adventure Theater, and they had Flash Gordon Conquers the Universe on it, and I used to love that. So I went off and wrote my own space opera.
It's not trying to be like high fantasy or high sci-fi fantasy, whatever. They're fairy tales. They're schmaltzier than that. And I don't know, I think the love story fundamentally works for me, though there are moments of it that are like awkward or bizarre. I don't know, to me that doesn't change the core, and the core is working for me. And same with like Obi-Wan and Anakin's relationship. Like, sure, maybe there are imperfections in the way that it's depicted or delivered, but when it culminates in something as powerful as that scene with Obi-Wan yelling at Anakin on the volcano, because that's where all the storylines converge and just everything comes out in this big dramatic final moment, and it's just perfection. I totally understand why Revenge of the Sith has just kind of exploded in popularity and become many people's favorite Star Wars movie. Like, rewatching it, it's easily my favorite of the prequel trilogy. I think ultimately I still have to give it to Empire Strikes Back for me. That'll just always be my favorite, but Revenge of the Sith is probably my second favorite. Oh, and did I mention that John Williams crafted perhaps the greatest soundtrack in the history of cinema for this trilogy? Because he absolutely did. I mean, the music in the prequel trilogy is incredible front to back. Every single track in every single movie is amazing. I think the prequel's music is even better than the original trilogy, and or just as good. He cemented his place in music history as one of the greatest composers of all time, in my opinion, for this trilogy. Yeah, absolutely helps lift the emotion of everything, makes everything feel more epic, more grand, more compelling, emotional in general. It's the crown jewel of this trilogy, in my opinion, is the music. It's amazing. And you know, I was talking earlier about how you could argue that certain moments in the movie are overly reliant on CG, the environments feel overly artificial, but there's also so much good atmosphere, good design, good buildings, cities, costumes, creature designs. Like, man, for everything that you can criticize these movies for, there are some classic designs that come out of it that are just so iconic, just like the original Star Wars, but it's iconic in a completely different way. And this is where I can understand how the initial reaction to the prequels might be different than how people in later generations perceive them, is because I'm not getting the whiplash of expectations versus what the prequels actually give. Because if I'm imagining the prequels before they come out, I'm imagining something that looks like the original Star Wars, but just more realistic or better. I'm not picturing this completely different style, this completely different take on everything. But I love the style. I love the take on it. I love the cinematography for much of it. I mean, it's not a super complex camera movement type of film. It's not the type of movie that is incredibly flashy with its editing or anything like that. I mean, it has the traditional classic Star Wars wipes and these types of things, these more silly story specific editing choices. But I don't know, there's just so much that I love. People are very cynical about the amount of designs that are in these movies as like, oh, just these are just all opportunities for more merchandising. They just want to make more toys, they just want to make more whatever. And I do think that there is a business angle to having so many designs, but on the other hand, it just also has a ton of really great designs. Like, sure, is every single design fantastic? No, but some of these designs for the places, the ships, the creatures, the characters themselves, and their really interesting anatomy. They could be these weird aliens, or they could be interesting machines. But I don't know, when I was looking for things to enjoy in the designs of basically every element, I never ran out of stuff to enjoy in any of these prequel movies. There's so many great designs. I just think that they're all fantastic, and I wasn't expecting to find so much to love. Yeah, after this most recent rewatch, I overall come to the conclusion that the movies are a mixed bag. They're still flawed, but I think that there is a fundamentally good story being told here, and it hits most of its key beats exceptionally well. Unlike a lot of Star Wars fans, I was born into the prequel era. As long as I've existed, the prequels have been a part of Star Wars, and so my perspective on the prequels is going to be somewhat different than people who grew up with the original Star Wars and then had all these expectations associated with it, and then end up getting the CG prequel soup that we all have come to appreciate. Fans had invented a whole different version of what the Clone Wars was going to be before the prequels got made, which is a really interesting rabbit hole to look into in and of itself. And it's a reason why I understand why like older fans didn't like the prequels so much. They had this like expectation associated with it, not only of it matching the original Star Wars, but like they had their own vision in their minds as to what this prequel material could look like. And then I guarantee you nobody envisioned the aesthetic, style, basically everything that came with the prequels, and that disconnect between expectation and what you're ultimately given, I think can in and of itself just be a massive disappointment to people. And you know, I do prefer the aesthetic of the original trilogy. As an older person, I like the realistic designs and look of everything. I love the tactile physical effects. I love the painted backgrounds, the miniatures, the puppets, all of these types of things. I do love that style for Star Wars. But I don't know, I've also just grown to appreciate the aesthetic of the prequels as well. And I think what I was missing with the prequels before, I think, was a result of me just hyper fixating on the negatives, on the negative qualities that exist within it, and just blowing that up in my perception, making it like the only thing that I'm noticing this whole time. And I'm not trying to say that, you know, all criticism of the prequels are so minimal that they should just be able to be brushed off and ignored. It was more of it's more of a mixed bag quality. Like these movies, they have genuine merits and they have genuine faults. But if you connect the pieces on all the things that have genuine merit, it adds up to an experience that is a really great trilogy of movies, in my opinion. Because fundamentally it handles really well Anakin's character arc, Anakin's character in general. I know I was just saying about Revenge of the Sith that the end, the way that he turns is unsatisfying. I still think it's just because it is so well conceptualized in general. It's a great idea for a character arc that is like 90% done really well, or like 85% done extremely well. Things that are done well are done exceptionally well. I was just missing before that it's like, okay, as imperfectly as that concept is delivered, it still is the intention and is what I feel rewatching it when I'm open to just appreciating the things that I like about it. So, to answer the question, do I think the prequels deserve to be redeemed? For me, the answer is yes. I think people like me were hyper fixating on negative traits in the movies that did exist and were largely motivated by a sense of disappointment based on their expectations for what was supposed to come. I think a lot of people in the immediate aftermath of the prequels were just disappointed because they were waiting for something different. And that's part of where I think this change is coming from. I think the generation that grew up with these movies are becoming adults now, and we didn't grow up with the expectations or a sense of disappointment based around the prequels. They were just always a part of Star Wars. And even though it looks very different to the original Star Wars on the surface, I really don't feel or think of them as fundamentally different in terms of quality. It's still very clearly the same basic creator behind everything, the same creative vision, but just with like a different set of technology behind the different approaches and different creative freedom. I mean, George Lucas was not free in the first Star Wars movie. It was a total nightmare. And for the prequels, he didn't have as much limitation. That is part of it. But I really do think that that's what most of it boils down to, is that the initial generation that received the prequels was almost set up for disappointment.
Thumbs way down.
You didn't like it?
No, I think I deserve a public apology from George Lucas.
And subsequent generations look back on Star Wars, and a lot of younger people just prefer the prequels because they like the effects. They think the effects are better. They think the designs are better. They just relate more to its darker tone, its more troubled characters, I guess. The old one is a bit campy, a bit simple compared to modern tastes, maybe. I mean, not for me. I love the original Star Wars. I'm not trying to disrespect the originals. But also, I think it's fair to say that this has to do with like fanfics culture, like the supplemental writings that are done to flesh out the world. Like the Clone Wars is probably the best example. Everybody knows the Clone Wars. I think the Clone Wars being really popular got a lot of people interested in the Star Wars universe. And like, I've seen the Clone Wars. I've seen some extra Star Wars things that aren't the movies, but I'm not as interested in that. And it genuinely, it doesn't even impact my opinion of the movies. Like, I've watched the Clone Wars, and it doesn't make me think the movies are any better or worse, because they don't really line up, frankly. It doesn't make sense that Ahsoka is Anakin's apprentice in the movie, because no, she isn't. She doesn't exist in the movie. Or there's no relationships with the clones. The clones don't have any personalities in the movie. That's only in the TV show. The TV show fixes the flaw where the clones have no personality, but that doesn't change the movie. It just makes a TV show where the story universe can be more interesting than in the movies. So for my money, I don't really care much for the fanfics kind of stuff, but I know it impacts a lot of people and makes them like the story more, and so much for the better. I just think these movies deserve to be appreciated more in terms of their just technical merits. We hyper-fixated on the bad for so long. It's time to start appreciating the positives in them. It just seems like that's happening naturally over time. And I hope the original cast and crew feel vindicated in that sense. What do you guys think? Do you like the prequels? Do you like the fanfics sort of culture and its impact on the way that you look at the prequels? Has the internet changed your mind on the prequels, or failed to change your mind on the prequels? Are the prequels still just total garbage and we're all just Gen Zers who don't understand what it was like before Star Wars was lame and all this stuff? Feel free to share any and all thoughts in the comments. If you liked the video, I'd appreciate you giving it a like today. But yeah, that's all I got for you guys today. Thanks for watching. See ya.